Right, good morning, people. Bob here, back once again. As usual, we're ready to break down some Bitcoin, and we will get right down to it. So we close out the week. We got the weekly chart here. Close out the week below this level. Probably not ideal. It's the lowest it's closed in a very long time. Realistically, you're talking, it's a lower close than these guys here. So, you could say that, since November of 2020, we haven't had to close that low since then. Now, starting out the week, bouncing off these lows here, already came up here, got rejected. So the question now becomes, does this thing just roll over and absolutely dump down here? Or do we actually see this thing kind of poke up, and start pushing up a little higher? Well, right this moment, it seems like the downside is pretty logical, but I think it's still feeling itself out for the week. Obviously, we're 12 hours into it, 13 hours into it. This was probably not the most ideal scenario. Now, as long as it can hold this low, you feel pretty good about where you're at. You start taking out these lows here, and you don't feel nearly as good about things. I think there's still some potential to come down here. To be frank, it wouldn't even vastly surprise me. But it's interesting because I look at this chart here, and I look at these lows here, and you can see where the RSI is there. Here we've got lower lows but a higher RSI, meaning that there is a divergence there. Now, is it going to lead to anything positive here? Who knows? The chart doesn't look amazing, right? But like I said, you've got this that says, it's diverging a little bit. It's not significant, but it's, again, higher low, lower low, lower low, higher low, divergence. There it is. We'll see how it goes. We've got the cross taking place now. We've been talking about this. I think that there's a good chance that this week, even if it ends up being a positive week, it may not be like a barn burner or anything. Like, it may not just go popping up off here. And it very well may sink down hard. I'm certainly not going to rule out the idea that it does sink down pretty significantly. But, and I didn't even have this trend line in here, I don't think, but there's probably a decent trend line that cuts through right here. So you maybe do have a bit of a falling wedge, even just this little pattern right here, that maybe could, pop out of there pretty significantly. We click it on over to the daily, and I think that this is maybe okay. And here's that bottom trend line from the falling wedge. Now, here's the interesting thing about what's going on right now is we've got a green day in here after multiple red days. Typically you might expect that you're just going to lead red with more red, but the simple fact of the matter is, as of right now, you had 3 days of downside, and you never took out the lows here. So a green start isn't entirely illogical here. And in fact, you could probably make the argument that there's maybe just a slight uptrend. This may be a back test, a bearish retest of this little, like I say, I dropped a trend line in here. This might be a bearish retest of that. But again, you still got the concept that this is in fact a higher low for now. And it didn't take out this low over here. So logic to the idea that it is bouncing a little bit here. Is it sustainable? Who knows? Because again, you're basically already you're coming up here to retest all of these as potential resistance. All of these lows over here. So not amazing, but again, it's not not a death sentence, at least at the moment. And then also, again, we do have something else going for us here. This is still intact. And the 21 simple on the daily chart hasn't been retested in several days now, about 5 days. So it would be logical to believe that if today Bitcoin can hold on and we can put in a green candle, which is, still 10 and a half hours away. But if we can put in a green candle, there's some logic to coming up here tomorrow, and who knows, even today, and putting in a retest up here in this 19.8 region. Again, it's all predicated based upon holding this as a green candle. And then again, I think there's at least potential for a nice upside push either to here, or even here. 20,700 potentially. But again, it all starts here today with this one and finding a way to reclaim 19,200. Would be nice to see Bitcoin close out the day above that level, but again, as long as it stays green, whatever it pushes up to today is probably a good chance that wick gets filled into the upside. Couple interesting things here. On the daily stochastic RSI, we do essentially have a breakout, in terms of right here. Showing an upward trend potentially starting. And then here on the RSI, we've not lost this little parabola here. So, it would be safe to say that some other traders are seeing the same thing we are, that there is, in fact, a parabola here, which is totally logical as well, because we talked about this recently, this falling wedge concept. When they break out and don't continue to push up, they tend to form rounded bottoms. Here we are staring at it right now. So again, we've got a few things that have some logic to them. And then in addition, again, we do sort of have an uptrend here. I put this trend line on here to signify that there is, in fact, something that resembles an uptrend within there. So, and here we go. Yeah, I measured out a move earlier, and we'll see it on my shorter term time frame, somewhere in the 170 region. So it gets us right up to this level, not above it just yet, but again, I don't think it's going to take much more as long as the bulls keep showing up here. I don't think it's going to take much to send this thing upwards for a few days here, at the very least. Now, again, could be completely wrong. That weekly chart, again, we just talked about it. It's not pretty, but the sooner we can reclaim this level and start to hold it, the better off I think we would be. And again, you look over here and you got 19.5 as a bottom here, so logical to think it might stop out there. You got 20K right here as the next level. So those would be the levels you'd really want to look out for potentially this week. Now, could this thing go roasting off up here up to 21.5 or something? Sure. And it may very well happen. I'm not, I'll never discount it. I mean, last week I was talking about a 10% move out of Bitcoin and how infrequently they happen. And then all of a sudden we get a 10% move out of Bitcoin. So again, I won't sit here and discount any concept. But again, the sooner we can reclaim this 19.2 level, the better off we're going to be. Not that it's a given that we'll continue to the upside that way, but again, it's all got to start somewhere. So here we are. We've got at least some sort of setup that looks logical for here we go. And then also, let's go ahead and drop our other potential trend line in right here. Just kind of referring back to the concept of an even larger falling wedge potentially. And then you've got that trend line. So let's assume for 1 second that this is the more realistic scenario. You can maybe make a case that, we still shouldn't fall below somewhere in this, this 18,000 even range. But this concept here, using this yellow line and this white line I just put in there, now, this does potentially open up the concept that we may still see some upward move and then followed by a downward move. Now, I'd like to think that if we're going to reclaim this area, we're not going to take out that low again. But again, I can't say that with any certainty, or I'd be sitting here like Uncle Scrooge swimming in a money bank, right? Like I'd be, if I could say everything with absolute certainty, no question about it, then I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. so but it looks as though any of those things would be logical. Come down here, tap down, and then recover this week. It would be great to see it actually break this thing this week. But again, just talking about that concept, even from here, we still got another 13% to go. Feasible? Of course it's feasible. It's Bitcoin. It can do those things. And here we go. We're already hitting a measured move target right now, as far as the move I was looking at earlier. But again, I think that there's some total logic to believe that we're going to get a couple of days of upside here. But again, not a given at this point. You know, with rounded bottoms, we know a couple things about those. If they fall out, when they fall out, it has a tendency to be somewhere about 75% of the way through this rounded bottom, and we're just slightly over halfway through. It would be my guess. You know, the midpoint's probably somewhere in here. So it would be logical to think that this thing, you know, is still probably you'd be over here before you'd actually start to see it potentially lose it. And again, total logic there too, because then if we talk about this falling wedge concept, we don't get the breakout of this trend line. Naturally, it has to come back down here, which again, we don't really want to see that happen, regardless of whether we can make money short or long. If this thing comes way down into here again after this move, and it comes up here, kind of gets tapped out, I just can't say for sure at that point that this market recovers in the near future. And by that I mean, you know, even potentially the next 4 years, that it could be a very prolonged bear market at that stage. Okay. Now, keeping in mind that if this falling wedge did play out and it did have to come way down into here and not break out until, you know, about 75% of the way through this concept, then we're talking November, you know, before that all plays out. So we got a lot of time in here to check things out. Looks like Bitcoin is in fact trying to recover that 19.2 level right now. Beautiful thing. Let's get that, please. You know, and let's assume for 1 second that we look at upside for, you know, the next 24 hours or so. I think a good logical concept would be, you know, let's assume that this thing works out as a rising channel. So again, 19.8, 19.9, somewhere in there, probably the most logical place. Then maybe you work your way down over here again for a few days before, you know, making another pop off that. So, you know, if we can manage to flip 19.2 into support today, at some point you come back and back test that. And that would probably be sometime after Bitcoin finds a way to get somewhere between 19.7-ish and 20,200, 20,300. You know, somewhere here to here would be a logical place to see Bitcoin get stopped out at some point over the next few days here. Again, assuming a few things about our patterns and everything that we've got going here. Okay, so let's get in on some shorter term time frames here. 4 hour Bitcoin, we got to reclaim the 21 simple here as well. Looks like it's working on that. 21 simple is somewhere in the 19,000 and change range right now, Bitcoin. And on the Heikin-Ashi candles, it's not always, the numbers are not always, like what you see over here is not an accurate depiction of the actual price at the time. Typically, that top number there will be the closest one, and then this one is more of an average of the last handful of candles. So basically, it's showing that on the 4 hour, you know, you could still see something down to the 19,040 range, but right now the price is closer to 19,230, which is great because you know that puts us up over this line here, and it's exactly what we want to see. You get a break of that trend line. You turn this into support again, and here you go. 20,500 is the number as a measured move breakout target from there. So again, we've got something that looks exactly like what we've been talking about, what we've been hoping for, expecting, etc. However you want to phrase it, it's looking like it's got potential to continue playing out for us. So that's good. And the 4 hour, you know, here stochastic RSI is curled up. The RSI, it probably, I don't see this thing lasting a whole lot longer. We could probably get one more 4 hour segment to the upside before this thing would curl over. So I'm going to assume 19.5 is our best case scenario for the next say 7.5 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that. I think that's our best case scenario, 19.5-ish. And then, you come back down, probably put in a retest here, or maybe even come all the way back down to just around 19,000 potentially. Now, could Bitcoin just keep ripping off some 4-hour uptrend? Sure, of course it can. But I think it's much more likely you come up here, retest this level, and then take off. If it's going to happen, in that time frame at all. Because you can see here, you lost this uptrend that was going on here. You kind of get a little bit of a double bottom out of this right here. So now the question becomes, is that double bottom strong enough to get you back up and above this particular trend line? Questionable. So you assume that if you come back up as a bearish retest, you're getting knocked down again. That probably puts you somewhere in this 19.480, 19.5 range. So see there, hourly chart at the moment, same concept playing out. We got support of a bunch of moving averages, but we're right up against the 200 here. It's going to continue to act as some resistance there. No problem. Eventually break through it. Now this chart here, because of the fact that the time frames are different, obviously things land in a different area a lot of times. Here, this trend line kind of more signifies all of the peak moves. And again, that peak move would bring you right here into the 19.4, 19.5 range. So again, everything's kind of lining up with what we've been talking about numbers-wise in terms of where we could expect some targets. And then really, let's just zoom in, real short-term time frames. Real nice pop here out of Bitcoin, all the way up to about 240 there. Selling off a little bit right now, but there are a few things I could look at here that potentially could play out more to the upside. But you get this measurement here, like I said, 170 is kind of where I had it measured to, but 19,240 is a pretty accurate assessment there. But one thing I was looking at with this right here, this kind of formation on the 15-minute, is that you could actually get sort of an inverse head and shoulder here, at which point maybe you come back down to this 19,075 range to make another move to the upside. But it may not even mess around there. I mean, you can already see it's popping pretty good here. So yeah, I mean, at this point, you kind of look at this chart and you take a look at what's been holding down the price action here for the most part the last several days, going back to the 23rd of September. We've only been above 19,280 one time, and it was very quick right over here, brief right here. That was this morning. Now here's our opportunity to try and get back above it again. Bulls pushing hard from here, bears pushing hard from here. You can see it's been fluctuating quite a bit over the last few minutes. So, but again, as long as it now comes down and it manages to hold, like 19,060 or so, upside continuation, it seems logical there. But again, I'm hopeful and or expecting that maybe we're going to get a few green days in a row here. If we don't, things are going to come off the rail pretty quickly, I would imagine. So we're going to keep an eye out for that. But really, that's all I got for you today. Keeping it simple. Downside targets, right to around 18.2, I would guess, as far as potential. And then upside targets into the 19.5, 19.7, somewhere in there, 19.4, 5, 6, 7. With a couple of day target being more up into this range, 20,500. But one step at a time. We won't get ahead of ourselves. Let's see if we can, push back up some more here. As always, though, appreciate you guys. Look forward to catching up again tomorrow.